Yeah, it's good. It's not. We also in future can put this here
Ah,
and just a little bit, and it will not cross like right now.
I might even put it on there.
No, because camera here, it will cross.
Oh, right.
Okay, have a nice stream.
Thank you. Hi. Today I've been thinking about what's most important. Funny how we can live our lives and be very concerned about things that are not very important and not realize that there are certain things that are very important. I must say I've learned a lot since I've been doing this live streaming and the 100 1-minute mental health and addiction videos at mentalhealthvideos.com. And what I've been saying is that in the 53 years that I was a doctor, first a hospital doctor, then a suburban family general practitioner doctor, and then had my own mental health and addiction clinic, which was a dual diagnosis clinic where we diagnosed and treated mental health at the same time as treating the addictions. The conclusion I reached was that the most important things in life are mental health, good relationships, and no addictions. If you want to have a good life, have good mental health, have good relationships, don't have any bad close relationships, and don't have any addictions. But perhaps we should make that a little bit more detailed and simpler. The most important things in your life are your feelings. If you feel right, you feel good, you can usually get everything else. The people who really go without are the people who feel terrible. There's no need for starvation today in developed countries, and there's no need for homelessness. You might say they're the most important things, to have stuff to eat, food to eat, and a home. But there are people that don't have those things because of their mental health disorders. There are practical reasons why some person may become homeless, but the main reason is usually poor mental health. There may be practical reasons why sometimes people are hungry, but the main reason for recurring or continual hunger is mental health. And the foundation, the core of your mental health is your feelings. And your feeling habits. That's the feelings you have over and over again. If your feelings are good and your feeling habits are good, you're going to be happy and healthy. You're going to have friends and family. You're going to get the things that you need. If your feelings are very bad and they're habitually bad, not just occasionally but most of the time bad, you may be very unhappy. You may become hungry and homeless and unhealthy and not have friends and not have family. So feelings are very important. And we start to lay the foundations of our feeling habits when we're babies in our first year of life, and we form them, the foundations are laid with whoever cares for us in our first year, usually our mother. If we have to be born while our head is very small in order to get through our mother's pelvis and vagina. Of course, now if our head's too big, they do a cesarean section, but I can just remember the time when the books on childbirth described how to destroy a baby's head to let it be born because it was too big to get out through its mother's pelvis. We used to do special x-rays to see how the baby's head fitted into the mother's pelvis. So what I'm going to do properly in the next week is to just sort out the really most important things, because we should all know what the most important things are. Today I've made a list, but I haven't got it organized as it should be. So it'll be a bit muddled. Causes are very important. It's a great help to be one of those people that asks why fairly often. I learned that from a friend. If you know why, that makes things much better, much easier, much better. being a good communicator is very important. A family member who was a brilliant law student topped his class against an ex-farm labourer who went to law school when I decided to go to medical school, topped his class against someone whose father and grandfather were lawyers, and that person became a Supreme Court judge, and this family member beat that a person in first and second year, and came second to him in third and fourth year at the law school. But he had problems in practicing as a lawyer because he had difficulty with communications. He didn't understand what people were thinking and feeling. Communication is very important. Failure to communicate can cause awful problems in families, result in divorces and family feuds. And here I want to say that faces are very important. Looking at a person's face, you may know better what they're thinking and feeling than listening to their words. People can tell you lies with their words, but if you look at their face, you often know what the truth is. So faces are very important. Smiling is so important. Smiling, you smile when you feel good, but smiling makes you feel good. And it's very important for us to feel good quite often. If you never feel good, that depresses your over 20 endorphin chemicals produced by your brain, and those chemicals manage your immune system, and your immune system is cells and antibodies and chemicals in every part of your body that fights infections, allergies, inflammation, autoimmune diseases and cancers. And it's so important to have strong endorphins, not weak endorphins, to be happy. The endorphins are happiness chemicals, but they're healthiness chemicals. And happiness and healthiness go together. That's a very important thing to know, that happiness and healthiness go together, and unhappiness and unhealthiness go together. In severe cases, seriously unhappy people get very sick and sometimes fatally sick in their youth when they should still be very healthy. So smiling and boosting your over 20 endorphin chemicals and your dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin brain chemicals are all very important. Pleasure is important. We all need pleasure sometimes. You must plan your life to include happiness and pleasure. And your family members, you must contribute to them being happy and having pleasure time sometimes, especially children. Living for pleasure doesn't work, but living without pleasure doesn't work either. And why is that? That's because our chemistry, our feelings are fundamentally important, and our chemistry is fundamentally important because they affect one another. When our chemistry is good, we feel good. When we feel good, our chemistry is better, and our chemistry is fundamental. And to have good chemistry, we have to have some things that make us happy and give us pleasure, not the sort of things that are addictive. It's very important to understand how addictiveness works. Addictive substances basically do two things. One is they give us relief from some form of suffering, and the second thing is they cause resistance in us. They cause our chemistry to develop resistance, so we then need a bigger amount of that addictive substance to give the same relief from suffering. And when we have to have a bigger amount of that addictive substance to get relief, we get a bigger resistance to it. And then the next time we have to have a bigger amount of the addictive chemistry to get the same relief. And so it goes on and on and on. So if ever you have any chemical, but also behavior as well, such as gambling or spending or eating or sexaholism, anything that you do that gives you relief, but the relief gets a bit less, so you have to have more of that substance or activity, is addictive. Just avoid it, because otherwise you'll end up having to have a great amount of that addictive substance or behavior to give you the relief or the pleasure that it gives you, and you won't be able to stop it because it has changed your chemistry so much that you'll feel terrible and, as they say, hang out if you don't have that. So understanding how addictiveness is very important. And closeness is very important. Humans and most animals require or need closeness. For 98% of human history, humans lived very close together in groups, in nature. There weren't any houses or apartment buildings. People lived in quite primitive camps without brick walls, and they were very close to one another. And that's how we are best. We are best when we're very close to other people. And they were very close to the same people, usually for their whole life. They were in these groups of 30 to 150 for two reasons. One is the group had to be big enough to protect one another from wild animals, because humans haven't always dominated the animal kingdom like we do today, and animals killed a lot of people. If someone lived on their own, they were going to be killed by the animals, so they had to live in groups, and usually the group had to be 30 or more. And the other reason why they had to live in a group that wasn't bigger than 150 was that there had to be enough food within walking distance. There had to be there were no factories, there were no farms. They had to walk out into nature and gather leaves and fruit and nuts and berries and roots, and catch or hunt animals and get enough food to eat and get home to the camp before it got dark, because there was no electricity. So closeness is something that our chemistry is geared for, and we're much better if we have closeness. And people who live alone, people who are lonely, science has now proved that loneliness is as damaging to health as 15 cigarettes a day. People who are lonely tend to get old younger, tend to get sick younger, tend to die younger. We need closeness. Medicine should be power in your pocket. The medicine industry, pharmaceutical industry, has become massive in the last few hundred years. Prior to that, people ate various fruit and vegetable products to improve their health, but the pharmaceutical industry is now dominant, and it's dominated by sales and profits. And there are two terrible things about that. People who need medicine want medicine that works fast and fixes them so they can stop taking it. But the pharmaceutical industry wants as many people as possible to take as much medicine as possible for as long as possible, to increase their sales and profits. And it does this in two ways, maybe three ways. It first of all makes as many medicines as it can get away with addictive, so that people need more and more of it. I can't stop it. For example, the commonest mental health issue is anxiety or worry. General anxiety, social anxiety, panic attacks, obsessive compulsive disease, phobias. And most of the medicines for anxiety and also for sleep, which is related, have been addictive. When I first started practice a long time ago, it was barbiturates, and barbiturates were addictive. And then in the 1960s we got the benzodiazepines, Valium, Seropax, Mogadon, and then other benzodiazepines, and they were all addictive. When I realized that and looked for a calming medicine that wasn't addictive, it was really difficult. But eventually I found one that was only slightly addictive. It was 100 years old, developed in the 1920s, and that was the nearest moderate strength calming medicine that was almost not addictive, called baclofen. And so they make the medicines addictive if they can. Oh, and all three of the medicines for attention deficit disorder are addictive. That's dexamphetamine, Ritalin, and Adderall. They're not as bad as methamphetamine, which is ice, but they're addictive, which causes all sorts of problems for people with ADD because of the rules and regulations around those medicines to try to make them safe. It makes them safe for some people but much more dangerous for other people. So they make the medicines addictive and they make them slow. All tablets and capsules that you swallow have to go right down your gut and by a very indirect route get into your general circulation, which takes half an hour to an hour. And it's between 1 and 2 hours before they have a strong effect. So that slowness substantially reduces the medicine's effectiveness. And I think that they don't make medicines as effective as they could be because people would get better too quickly and stop taking them. What I found was that powder medicine was much better. Your tongue is red or pink because the blood vessels are so close to the surface, and if you drop powder medicine on your tongue and suck it, don't swallow it, it gets into your circulation and starts to work in 5 minutes, and in 10 to 15 minutes it's having a very strong effect. And that speed of effect is very helpful. And that needs to be in a pocket dispenser like this so that you've got the medicine. The medicine is power in your pocket. It's powder in your pocket that gives you power. When you start to crave for something, or you start to suffer something like panic attacks or social phobia or craving for alcohol or heroin or whatever, if you can whip the medicine out like that and just drop it on your tongue and suck it, don't swallow it, it'll work so fast that that craving or suffering doesn't get strong. It's much easier to stop craving and suffering if you get it early than to make it go away once it's strong. So craving or suffering that you take tablets for gets quite strong within the half hour to an hour that the tablets and capsules start to work. But powder on your tongue that's absorbed in 5 minutes and starts to work and is having peak strong effect in 10 to 15 minutes is very important. Dual diagnosis is very important. It's an absolute disaster that the treatment of mental health and the treatment of addictions are done by different clinics. In my 1 year I treated 700 heroin addicts, and a third of them, about 230 of them, had serious had ADD, ADHD. People think that the addiction causes a mental health problem. Well, it doesn't make the mental health problem better, it makes it worse. But it was quite clear that these people had had ADD in childhood, and it wasn't till their teens or 20s or 30s that they got onto heroin and became addicts. And when I that alerted me to look carefully into the background, the childhood and the families of people who became addicts, and I found that 19 out of 20 of them, that's 95% of them, had had serious mental health issues and suffering long before they started to take addictive substances and became addicts. So if you've got a system where you've got mental health clinics over here who will not see addicts, they won't give an addict an appointment, and you've got addiction clinics over here which do nothing about mental health issues, don't know what mental health is or don't care, don't think it's important, don't do it. Well, that's the reason why so many people have so much difficulty getting off their addictions and why they so often relapse. They live their lives in danger of one drink and back down the drain, one shot of heroin and they're gone, one cigarette and they're back on the smoking. So it's and when you've got medicines that work slowly, or when you've got medicines that work quickly and they're in your pocket and you can take them as soon as you feel a problem starting, then they work much better and you need less of them. But if you have to, but if you've got tablets or capsules that take half an hour to an hour to start to work and between 1 and 2 hours to be strong, then you have to take them 2 or 3 times a day, whether you've got the problem or not, in case you get the problem. And it's very important to know that some suffering can save your life. Some suffering can save your life. I had an uncle who I don't remember because he died 2 years after I was born. He died in the back blocks of South Australia, no, the back blocks of Western Australia from appendicitis. He was working in a remote mine. He got appendicitis. He didn't get his appendix removed for 2 days, and it was too late and he died. If appendicitis didn't hurt us, lots of people would die from appendicitis. When I got appendicitis, I knew because I had pain. and the pain was where my appendix is, so I went and got my appendix out pretty promptly, and limped a bit for a couple of weeks, but I didn't die. If appendicitis was painless, if I got no pain, I might have died from it, because I just would have carried on until the infection was very spread. And so there are certain feelings, suffering, which we mustn't stop with medicine or other treatments. We got to stop them by finding the cause and fixing the cause. So if you're suffering from worry, anxiety, from pain, from loneliness, from sadness, from anger and irritability, look for the cause. They are warnings that something needs to be fixed, and that distress may save your life or save you from serious consequences. Self-assessment and self-esteem and being yourself, your true natural self, are very important. As children and as we're growing, our view of ourselves is often heavily affected by how other people view us and what they say about us and how they treat us. But it's very important, probably from the teens onwards, to be accurate in your assessment of yourself. What are you good at? What are you not good at? And why? How intelligent are you? How loving are you? How bad-tempered are you? And it's very important to have an accurate understanding of yourself and your abilities and your qualities and your weaknesses. And for your self-esteem to be accurate. Self-esteem problems are so common. A lot of people think that they're not as capable or as good as they are. They have an inferiority complex, and their inferiority complex can stop them from doing things that they need to do and that they could do, but they just think, oh, I couldn't do that. And it can have the opposite effect. A lot of the hardest working, most successful people have got an inferiority complex which they're trying to overcome by doing great things to prove that they aren't inferior. And that can cause them a lot of trouble. They can become workaholics and neglect other important aspects of their life because they're just working to have achievements to prove that they're not inferior because they think they are inferior. So ask yourself, do I have an inferiority complex? Do I think I'm not as good as what I really am? Were the people in my life, sadly, family members who put me down and made me think that I'm not as good as I am? Were there teachers or neighbours or even friends who put me down and made me feel inferior. And of course, superiority complexes, which are much less common and are often a sort of antidote to an inferiority complex, also cause problems. People think that they are better than they are. They try to do things which are too big and too hard for them, and they get very stressed and they may crash. So, and people with a superiority complex can be very selfish and unreasonable. If you're a kid whose parents needed you so badly that they treated you as if you were much better than you were, it can end up being very selfish and very uncooperative and having bad relationships and having a bad life. So part of growing up has to be accurate self-assessment, accurate self-esteem, and being yourself. Because part of the problem is that you may not be yourself. You're just a dumb kid from this working class family, so you have an inferiority complex, and you do less well in your education than you should. You do less well in your employment. You do less well in your marriage. So you don't be yourself. So it's very important to have accurate self-assessment, accurate self-esteem, and be yourself. I want to say a few words about a very important medicine. I take it every night myself. That's low-dose naltrexone. Someone on this program commented that naltrexone makes you very sick and you can't really take it. It's useless stuff. The history of naltrexone is that around 1960, scientists found that we had opiate receptors on our cells, on our nerve cells and brain cells and other cells. And opiate receptors are little landing strips, and heroin molecules would land on these landing strips and get into the cell and cause the heroin effects, cause the addiction and the chaos. So they thought if they could make a medicine that landed on these opiate receptors and blocked the heroin out, that would fix heroin addiction. So in Long Island, New York in 1963, they produced naltrexone, and naltrexone blocks your opiate receptors very effectively. But they got the dose horribly wrong. The dose that was approved by the FDA in 1984 was 50 milligrams, and all the naltrexone was 50 milligram tablets. And, I worked in a clinic to begin with. My first experience of addiction was a clinic where they gave everybody one naltrexone tablet a day, 50 milligrams. And they got terrible side effects. They got terribly anxious, shaky, nauseated, couldn't sleep, even a bit psychotic sometimes. And they wouldn't stop it. And the doctor who ran that clinic just said, oh, they just want to get back on the heroin. But that wasn't the case. 50 milligrams of naltrexone was too much, and it gave them very bad side effects. And a very smart doctor who was the addiction commissioner for New York, and I'll think of his name in a minute, he had 41 methadone clinics, and methadone is terrible stuff. It's a bit better than heroin, but not much. It's about 5 times as addictive as heroin. And he was looking for something better than methadone for his 41 methadone clinics. So when the FDA approved naltrexone 50 milligram tablets, he gave that to some of his patients, and they wouldn't stay on them. And he realised they were just too strong. So he tried it, naltrexone from 1 milligram to 10 milligrams and found that 3 milligrams was the best dose. Because what the people who made naltrexone originally hadn't realised is that we have opiate receptors because we produce opiates ourselves. We produce over 20 chemicals that work through opiate receptors, land on opiate receptors and have their effect. They have pain-killing effects and they have distress-relieving effects. So when you give someone 50 milligrams of naltrexone, they can't, or that completely blocks heroin usually for 24 hours. But it also blocks your endorphins for 24 hours, which is what makes people feel terrible. But 3 milligrams of naltrexone blocks the endorphin, blocks the opiate receptors for 3 hours, and that 3 hours you have no endorphin benefits, and so your chemistry fights back, increases the endorphins by 250 to 300% to try to override the block. But it doesn't have to override the block, because after 3 hours the block goes, because 3 milligrams of naltrexone only lasts for 3 hours, and then the person has got all these endorphins for the next 24 hours. So they feel much better, and it greatly mitigates opiate addiction, mainly heroin and painkillers, codeine, OxyContin, and other addictive, all the addictive painkillers. So for that person to make this comment in this program that naltrexone is no good is true. If you've only got 50 milligram tablet, if you've got 3 milligrams, which is called LDN or low dose naltrexone, it's wonderful, because that boosting of your endorphins not only stops the need for heroin and opioid painkillers, it also blocks alcohol. It also makes people feel much better, and it boosts their immune system because endorphins manage the immune system, so it boosts the cells and antibodies and chemicals in every part of your body that fight disease. So it reduces infections, allergies, inflammation, autoimmune diseases and cancers. Bernard Bihari, Dr. Bernard Bihari was the New York Addiction Commissioner, and he treated lots of people with cancer, and now they have a worldwide LDN conference every year since 2014, the last 10 years, and you can look up the LDN Research Trust, and find out about that. So I just wanted to clarify that because it's so important. Low-dose naltrexone is so important. I take it every night because one of my grandmothers and one of my first cousins died of bowel cancer in their early 60s, so they probably got it in their 50s. I don't want to get bowel cancer. And another cousin died of pancreatic cancer when he was 68. So I want to have high endorphins, both to make me feel better, but also mainly to prevent serious illnesses. But I took low-dose naltrexone to the next stage. I made what I call RMN, which is repeated microdose naltrexone, because the problem with even 3 milligrams, if someone who had heroin or codeine or addictive painkillers in them took even 3 milligrams, they got terrible, what we call rapid detox. It just pushed all the opioids out of their opioid cells and they felt terrible. I can still picture a guy who made a mistake of taking a small dose of naltrexone when he still had heroin in him, and he suffered so badly that he just even when I explained why it had caused the problem and he understood it all, he still wouldn't go near microdoses of naltrexone. But so Dr. Bihari didn't overcome this problem, that it was very difficult to get people started on LDN, low-dose naltrexone, unless they stopped heroin or addictive painkillers for 3 days, which they found very hard to do. So I thought, well, let's try this, and I tried giving addicts from 1/8 to 1.5 milligrams of naltrexone when they were trying to get off heroin. And what I found is that addicts, as soon as they started to crave heroin or the addictive painkiller, could take 3/4 of a milligram of naltrexone, a microdose of naltrexone, which relieved their craving and suffering and didn't cause any side effects, and gave them relief from suffering for about an hour. Then we give them another 3/4 of a milligram, and that wouldn't cause any side effects, and it'd give them relief for an hour. Then we give them another 3/4 of a milligram, and if they had 8 or 10 doses of 3/4 of a milligram, they could then start to take 1.5 milligrams and get relief for 2 or 3 hours. And then if they stayed on 1.5 milligrams until they'd had no heroin for 24 hours, then they could start to take 2.25 milligrams, and when they'd had no heroin or addictive painkiller for 72 hours, they could take the 3 milligrams or 4.5 or 6 milligrams of low-dose naltrexone without side effects, and it just made them feel so much better because of the boosted endorphins, and they didn't relapse. So repeated microdose naltrexone and low-dose naltrexone are two very important medical treatments. And since I started to do this live streaming, I get as much as half a dozen emails a day from hookers wanting to me to use their services. And it's very apparent, both with the print media and with television and with phones and computers, that physical sex has taken over. It's so common, and kids can't. It's a major problem with social media. The extreme prominence of physical sex, and I think we should view that as very important, because what people need is love and affection and touching and sex, but society is starting to live as if physical sex is all that matters, and don't talk about, or they talk about love, but they don't really give it its full value. And I haven't fully worked this out yet, but I'd like to get your mind ticking, and you can think about it and maybe let me know what you think, because I'm very very happy to get the feedback and the opinions of the viewers. But what I think is that for 98% of human life, humans had great closeness, no brick walls, close communities of people very like them, because so many of them were their relations, their parents, their grandparents, their uncles, their aunties, their cousins, their second cousins, their third cousins, and they had great closeness, and that's what we still need. That's what our chemistry is geared for. But now you don't even know much about your next door neighbours. Well, some people do, but most people don't. Where were they born? 100 miles away, the other side of the country, another state, the other side of the world. And we have brick walls. Yeah, we get on the bus or the train, and we mix with all these people, and we mix with some people at work, but we don't have the 24/7 closeness that humans developed on and that our chemistry is based on. And this separation and emphasis on physical sex. The latest one that's been coming to me is these emails which say, this is not a dating site. Just pick a woman and tell her you want to fuck. That's what I'm getting all the time. And I have needs, but my needs are for closeness, for love and affection. And I don't know what's happened to my hormones, but I don't have much interest in physical sex at all. I'm not sure whether to be glad or sorry about that. There's a story of the three old blokes in the pub having a beer, and one of them said, I've lost half my sex drive. And his mate thought for a while. He said, and is that a good thing or a bad thing? And he said, I don't know, but it's a hell of a lot easier. So I think that there's a whole change of human society which is not in a good direction, of people not being close to other people, and with the emphasis being on superficial visual sexuality, not love and affection and caring. Yeah. The last one I got today, because I never responded to any of them, was much more subtle and made out as if she was genuinely interested in me as a partner, because I am divorced and I don't have a partner and I am looking for a partner, but she made out that she'd love me to come over and she'd look after me and give me a drink and feed me and blah blah blah. So I responded and said, yeah, well, you say we've met and you liked me, but where did we meet? I can't remember your name, and so please tell me where we met and send me some photos. And so she sent me some obscene photos, and I just realised that they're just getting more dominant. It's never been this blatant. If you wanted to have sex with a prostitute, it took a bit of finding. But now they're right there and saying, we live close to you, can we come over to your place, or would you like to come to our place? And I get up to 6 of these emails a day. So I think why I'm telling you this is that we must all realise that closeness to other people is a fundamental need to have a good life, and superficiality won't do, and loneliness is as damaging as 15 cigarettes a day, and lonely people get old and sick and die younger than people who have happy relationships. Today I went to a Vietnamese fruit and vegetable store where I go every second Sunday, and it's interesting to look at all the different people there. And I saw this very elderly man, and I do this a bit now. I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, "I'm 87, how old are you?" He said, "Oh, I'm 93. And that man has had closeness. He's had good relationships. And I see people in their mid-70s that look very unwell and unhappy, and my guess is one of the factors, probably a major factor, is they haven't had closeness. They haven't had affection, they haven't had love. Yeah. So where are we up to? So these are all the important things. Oh, and by the way, we've decided to start a new club because we'd like to interact more with the people who look at our videos and our live streaming, and we can see that a lot of them would like to communicate with one another. So we've decided to form the Mental Fix-It Chat Club, the Mental Fix-It Chat Club. And my tech guy who understands how to turn these dreams into realities will be doing that in the next few days, and we'll let you know, and we hope it will be a club that people can feel that they belong to, and that they can tell us what they think, ask us and others questions, get a general feeling, different people's ideas, and that will help them to be healthy and happy and smile as well. Okay, so now I think that it's time to stop. And I'll be back on Tuesday and Thursday, and then Saturday and Sunday next week, and on Sunday mornings to try and reach some people in New York who are 12 hours behind us. So now I'm going to show my technical inabilities by having some difficulty switching this equipment off.